Hello, everyone, everywhere. Pastor Bob Thibodeau here. Welcome to the Kingdom Crossroads podcast today. We're so blessed you're joining us. In today's world, prophetic signs seem to be aligning like never before. From global conflicts to economic instability, from Israel's pivotal role in prophecy to technological advancements paving the way for a one world system, it is clear that the chess pieces are all moving into place. But how close are we to the tribulation? What does the help of Pope Francis, believed to be the final pope according to St. Malachy's prophecy, how does his health right now, his health problems, mean for the end time events? Well, join us today as we dive into these pressing questions with our good friend, Scott Wright. Scott has been on before. He's author of the God Center Concepts Journal and host of the God Center Concept podcast. Help me welcome to the program our good friend, Scott Wright. Scott, it's a blessing to have you back on the program today, brother, because we got a lot to talk about, and I mean a lot. Amen.
Man, it's great to be here, brother. I'm ready to get it rolling, and let's have another fun and fruitful discussion.
Amen. Well, you shared with me, this is kind of like looking at a chessboard. I'll
Yes.
call it the chessboard prophecy or chessboard of prophecy. And you said that the chess pieces, they're being moved right now into place. What are the key pieces that must be in position for the tribulation to unfold according to biblical prophecy?
Well, the first thing is that there has to be some alignment with Israel, and that's one of the primary keys. And here's the thing: Israel is getting in a strong position where there could be something that could happen at the temple, and them being able to build that third temple. We could I believe that that's going to happen at some point here in the next 10 to 15 years.
Mm.
And you think about the Abrahamic Accords. See, that's a big one. And what's interesting about those accords is that kind of went unnoticed for a while because we were in the midst of a global crisis with COVID.
Yeah,
That was
amen.
being done right at the very end of Trump's first presidency and when he was president 45. But that was a huge thing. And you had the UAE was one of those countries that
Yeah.
normalized relations. And of course, then we have the attacks. And, one of the potential motives of the attacks of Hamas and Hezbollah, with obviously Iran funneling all the money that they had made after Biden had taken office and him removing all the restrictions and embargoes and all the all the sanctions that they had against Iran, and they took that money and they funded them. And part of it is because, and even though it's not being talked about that much, Saudi Arabia had been talking about normalized relations with Israel
Mhm. Yeah,
and them being
amen.
part of that Abrahamic Accords. That is a big deal. I would really, if you're, look, I know there's people out there, they have these quote visions or little spine tingling feelings that they have with prophecy. And I listen to them all the time. But guys, look at the evidence. When I give you a prophetic visionary statement, I'm using not just what I'm getting in prayer, but I align that with evidence.
Amen.
Because even in the Old Testament, there was always evidence.
Hmm.
You know, the prophet speaking was always the last part of it.
Right.
It was kind of
Amen.
like the last warning. When God, God used the priests and the kings, but when they had turned away from him or Israel was not following them, and then there would be evidence, and then the prophets would speak. And those prophets, that was your last warning. That was like, this is
Exactly.
it. I mean,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
you're he's getting ready to throw the flamethrower on you if you don't do what he's saying. And this is what's going to happen. So, you know, prophecy, I don't believe it's changed. God hasn't changed. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so these Abrahamic Accords to me are a big deal. And I would really
Amen.
pay attention to how that unfolds with the global situation that's going on. You've got China that's kind of teetering on the point of being aggressive, but they're trying to do it under the radar. And obviously, the whole Taiwan situation, the AI
Yeah.
thing, the trade wars. So they're trying to do it more technologically and economically. You got Russia and Ukraine, and I mean, that's a fiasco. But, I mean, it just is. It's like it's something completely different every day, and you just kind of wonder the stability of the two leaders. But if you look at Russia, you know, Russia in many ways is involved in prophecy. And so
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, them being sparked here and thinking they can be aggressive without any type of retribution or any type of accountability to that, they that just makes them more emboldened to be continue to be aggressive. It just makes, unfortunately, appeasement makes the aggressor more aggressive. So
That's right. Amen. Because they
it
think they can get
does
away with it. Yeah.
exactly. So
Well,
you know,
many scholars believe
it's a
that,
situation to watch for.
Israel is playing a central role right now in end time prophecies. What's the most significant developments in the Middle East right now that's pointing to biblical fulfillment?
Well, I think them being able to Israel really stepping up their their posturing over with these groups at Hezbollah and Hamas that that had those attacks, they're going to control these areas harder. And when they do that, the more that they do that, and the more that they take control, and the more that the United States supports that, and also promotes peace, I think eventually that's going to give way to an ability or the ability for them to be able to build that temple. I do.
Mm.
And here's the thing: that Temple Mount, that where the Dome of the Rock is right now, sits on a fault line, and it is nothing but rubble underneath. It's not solid ground. It wouldn't take much of just a decent earthquake for that thing to come down,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, they have all the pieces in place to build that temple. Everything's already
Amen.
ready. They up to the red. I mean, they got the red heifers. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Amen.
it's like
And they're only going to be alive so long.
yeah. So I mean, and they're gonna have they got everything in place. They got all the building structures, materials, engineers, everybody ready to go. And especially with today's technology and ability to build, it wouldn't take them that long to build that.
Yeah, I've read some stuff or seen some stuff. I can't remember now which, where they said they could have the whole temple built within a year,
Yeah,
easy.
easily.
And but in the meantime, they could have the tabernacle in place in a matter of hours.
Yep,
You know,
exactly.
6 hours, they get the go ahead. The tabernacle will be up there in 6 hours, and then
Yeah,
they'll start building the temple after that. You
that
know.
isn't going to be as hard as it was back in Moses's day to put
Yeah,
that thing
exactly.
together.
They don't have to
So
make it. They got it all. All they got
they
to do is
have it. I
assemble
mean,
it. In the
I mean,
military, we'd pull into an area. If we had to put up a GP medium tent, it's one that you sleep probably, 20 people inside. Uh, we could have that thing set up in 15, 20 minutes. I mean, so I mean, and that,
wouldn't take much.
when they get the go ahead, it's going to be quick.
It is going to be quick.
Something will be there fast. And many scholars believe, that, well, let me put it like this. How could I say this, Lord? Revelation speaks of a global system under the Antichrist.
Yes.
How close are we to seeing a type of centralized government, digital currency, or systematic total control?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because this technology piece is a big deal. And back in the earlier 2000s, obviously they were, there was, and they're still trying to figure out who the person was that developed Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So you had that being developed. You had hologram technology being developed. And, there's, I've seen it, I've even seen it on video where I think it was an Atlanta Hawks game that I was watching. And I saw their like end of quarter show, and it looked like all of a sudden the lights kind of went out and it was all this technology piece, and it looked like the floor disappeared and there was this whole hologram imaging and all this kind of crazy entertainment stuff. And
Mm.
it's, they were able to create that illusion. And that's been a while. That's been what, 10, 12 years, I think, since I saw that. So
Wow. Okay.
my point is this, is that technology is even further now. So we've got hologram technology. We've got now AI, which I
Mhm.
want to get to that part in a minute. we now have digital currency that is being used to buy and sell already. We have ability to chip, to put chips in people. I mean, if you have a medical device that's put on you, it has a chip.
Yeah.
So, we have medical devices and stuff like that. People are getting tattoos like it's no big deal anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that technology is really quick. So you can see people getting barcodes being put on them just with a tattoo that you'd have to wear. So that's an easy thing. And then here's the big one. And 9/11 is really what created this, is what I call the surveillance nation. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I were talking about some of your cop days and everything being recorded and all that stuff. And I've had when I've Uber drived, I had a dash cam and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ability to be able to record everything. You have cameras at every street corner. I mean, if you
Yeah.
guys ever saw the show Persons of Interest, I mean,
Yeah. Amen. Yeah,
so
that was a good show.
yeah, it was a good show, and it kind of gives you a highlight of really the global surveillance. I mean, satellite technology. You've got all the cameras everywhere. Everything's being recorded all the time. I mean, and you don't even need those cameras because everybody's got them on their phones.
Yeah. Some people
So
have them in their cars.
exactly. So the ability to record and track is really, that may be as big a piece to this as anything. And so, just like on our computers here, we've got we're sitting here talking on an eye camera. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've got
Yeah.
I've got my desktop camera, and that here, and you've got yours, and so we're able to communicate back and forth from over 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And
In
so
real
now,
time.
you start bringing all that together, and then you start creating AI that has the ability to think and act human, but yet it never needs to go to the bathroom. It never needs sleep. It's a 24/7 thing. We already have a Chinese company that has an AI as its CEO.
Oh, really? Wow.
So, you got to start thinking about this. And the problem is people are starting to see some of the dangers of AI, but the genie's out of the bottle. And now you got these countries competing to get further ahead than the other countries, just like what
Yeah.
happened with the nuclear arms race and industrial revolution, and which is why Britain got ahead of all the countries, is what happened. That's why they were the most dominant country in the world for so long. And as they say, the sun never sets on the British Empire. But a global governance is not that far fetched anymore when you consider all these pieces. These are all these chess pieces. And this AI, people keep talking about, like when you read in the Bible, you look at the Antichrist, and it how it's going to be killed. The Antichrist is going to be killed and then come back to life and all this stuff. Well, how easy is that with AI?
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, in
Exactly.
the
Just
AI,
reprogram it.
yeah, it's simple. I mean, so this AI thing, I would really pay attention to this because I think it is going to have a huge influence in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
AI is going to completely change the way we live. It's going to be
It's
a
already
paradigm
done
shift.
that. It's
And it
already
already
done
is,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Amen.
it's going to be a paradigm shift like in 10 years, like nothing we've seen.
Amen. Back when I first started in online ministry, so this, I want to say 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere in that area. Uh, Book came out. I can't remember the name of it now. I've got it up on a bookshelf, but it was talking about the Saint Malachi prophecy. And this was, talking about the last pope that, they had already run through, Malachi had given a list of all the popes in existence, started with Pope number one. And then he got down, about all the popes that had been, and then he started talking about the ones that were coming in the future. And, you know, he gave, obviously he couldn't give them a name, 200 years ahead or something like that. But, he would say this pope will be about this, and this is where, he it gave basically a description of this pope's ministry during his reign. And then he got down to what was called, the last pope would be this one. And if you go back and look at all the popes, they're all nailed. I mean, he's prophesying, 50, 100 years ahead of himself, and he's nailing the description of every single pope, where they're from, what their mission will be. Everyone has their own interpretation of how they're going to operate, and he nailed all of them. Got to the last pope, and he said, now with this last pope, he's the last one because after him, Jesus is coming. you know and that's the prophecy that after the last pope, when the last pope dies, it's all over. And he nailed it all the way down, even to the point of this pope being a Jesuit, right? And I mean, he just, and it's all, the prophecies have been there. And according to his prophecy, Pope Francis is the final pope before the return of Jesus.
Wow.
And now he's in the hospital with declining health and growing speculation about Vatican leadership. Do you see any prophetic significance in his eventual passing? If something, I mean, the guy's old, he's got health problems. We know something's going to happen. We don't know when, but could this just be another sign that we are entering the final prophetic timeline?
So you wanted to make sure that we have another episode, didn't you? I'm going to have to get up. This is one area I've not studied, and I'm not going to pretend that I have.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm going to have to get read up on the Malachy prophecy of the popes. So
yeah, I just seen on the news yesterday where he's in the hospital with health problems. They thought it was a cold, but now it's more than that, and he's in declining health and all that. And I texted a friend of mine because he's the one who told me about the book way back when. I said, "Hey, did you see this?" He goes, "Yeah," type thing. So I got to dig the book out and go through it again. That's why I was trying to remember everything I could about it. But yeah, I mean, and to me, that's just another signpost that check the box. All these things have to happen before Jesus comes. We just check another box here, and because I mean, how long do we have? No one knows the day or hour.
No.
But based on the signs we see, how close do you believe we are to the tribulation period? Not, are we in the final moments before it all begins?
So I've said this, and you like to always allude to my 2038, but I believe that we're about 10 to 15 years away. And there's some other signs and reasons why I think that. I believe this AI technology needs to get a little more advanced. I think digital currency needs to become a little more stable. But I also think what's happening is the world is becoming more unstable.
Yeah, amen.
And I think that actually is going to lend credibility for having a one world governance. We sort of have a semblance of it right now with the United Nations. Mm-hmm. It's like there's little pieces of it in place. But, I think that we're not quite there yet, but you can see it getting there pretty quick. I mean, and I believe that it can. And here, I'll give you guys something to look at. It's called a super tetrad. Mm-hmm. All right. Just look up what a super tetrad is. And most people have never, I don't know why people haven't paid attention to this, but if you look at it, there's going to be a super tetrad in the year 2043, 2044. They don't have one on record ever happening. And what this is 4 blood moons, just like the whole 4 blood moons thing. But with each one, there'll also be a solar eclipse that'll be relatively in between each part of that. So you have a blood moon, have a solar eclipse, blood moon, solar eclipse, blood moon, solar eclipse, blood moon, solar eclipse. It's never happened, at least as far as they have on record. And so for that to all happen, that is a major sign. And then there's going to be another tetrad exactly 7 years later, 2050, 2051.
Amen.
So there's an awakening right there that I think, there will be signs in the heavens. And that's what they would have been referring to when those things were written. with stuff like that, with lunar eclipses and
Yeah.
all the,
Jesus
solar
said the sun will
eclipses.
be darkened and the moon will turn to blood.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you right now, with technology the way it is, you get an AI in control, and there's a part of the world that is getting off the beaten track. What if it decides to fire nuclear weapons at a part of the world? Well, let me tell you something. If you want to understand nuclear winter, I actually was listening to Glenn Beck, and there was a lady on there that was talking about it. And I could have sworn she was just preaching right out of the book of Revelation of the
Amen.
aftermath of what that would be. How the sun, you wouldn't be able to see the sun because of the ash and all the stuff, and the nuclear winter and all that stuff. I mean, it's almost like they're describing that. That
Yeah.
also is what can happen if you have a massive meteorite hit in an area
Mm-hmm.
too. So
Yep.
it's very similar to a nuclear weapon.
Yep. And we got some
Massive,
of
massive
those coming
volcano
in.
goes off.
They're trying to say that, it's gonna pass. Yeah, it's gonna pass the asteroid Apophis is gonna pass between the Earth and where our satellites are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what, 25, 26, 27,000 miles is the stationary satellite.
Yep.
This asteroid is going to pass between us and the satellites. And that's what they're predicting. Oh, don't worry. It's not going to hit us. Don't worry. It'll pass. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because what else would they say? Oh, man, it's over.
Yeah.
Imagine the chaos to be going on. So they got to say it's going to pass us.
Yes.
And then when it hits, they'll deal with the aftermath,
Right.
once it hits. But they don't want people planning on, what you
If
just
they're even
talked
around
about.
to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's, all I can say is, with all these signs converging, what should Christians be doing right now to be spiritually prepared and emotionally prepared, even practically prepared for what's coming?
Well, I think number one, we need to be talking to people about the truth. And number two, we need to be diving into the truth. You need to be connecting with God all the time. We need to be reading our Bibles. We need to be in prayer, and we need to be praying for other people's souls. We do. And for God to soften the ground in people's hearts to receive the seeds of the gospel, so that those seeds of the gospel and his truth will plant in their hearts and grow in their hearts, and they will come to Christ. That's what we need to be
Amen.
praying. Because look, if when we look at our lives through the lens of this life, then you're always going to think about your fleshly needs. But if you look through the lens of God and you look at it the way he sees it, you're always going to view life through the eternal perspective. And we need to be walking in that eternal perspective. Who can we reach? Are we making disciples? I mean, the Great Commission. We need to be fulfilling the Great Commission. And that's the other piece of this, is the Great Commission hasn't been fully fulfilled yet.
Amen.
That will be fulfilled before all this completes. But so here's interesting. There's a project out there to try to have that done by the end of the 2030s.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Amen.
you've got Dubai, UAE, which we've talked about as potentially Babylon the Great. And it really fits the description. And if you compare Las Vegas being that entertainment area in New Orleans, and you compare it to the Dubai, Dubai's like the Ferrari, and they're like the little, Pinto over here that's
Yeah.
made in
Yeah.
the early 80s and late 70s.
Yep.
So it's
Amen.
it's not even a comparison. And they have a project to make it the most technologically advanced and wealthiest city on earth by 2040. I think it's called
Amen.
Project 2040. So, that kind of, again,
That
that
kind of lines
alludes.
up there too. Yeah.
Exactly. So, there's just so much evidence for the end of the 2030s and into the 2040s. And I've talked to you guys about, the seven ages of the church and how it really fits. It really fits into a pattern. And God put that pattern there for us to see it that way, for us to
Yep.
understand it. But it's funny, that pattern isn't going to be wasn't revealed here till the end.
Yeah.
You know,
Amen.
it's
Amen.
just like Daniel, the Daniel prophecy sealed these things up until the
Yep.
time of the
The
end.
time of the end.
So,
Amen.
and it's
Amen.
not just that. There's so many things that are being unsealed. There's so many pieces to all of this.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
when you pile up all the evidence, I think I think it I think in the 2030s, 2040s, we're gonna see all this start to play out.
Amen. Amen. Well,
And I'm
Scott,
not,
this was so
hey, and I'm
interesting.
not going to predict some rapture. I'm staying away from that because, first of all, nobody knows for
Right.
sure. And there's so much different varying pieces of evidence in different directions,
Yep.
pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. I mean, there's all these things. I don't really dive into the whole rapture thing.
Yeah.
I just let all the other scholars talk about that one, and it'll happen when it happens. Is the way what I tell
Exactly.
people.
That's
So,
why that's my feeling too. So, I'm praying for the first one, but if I gotta
yes.
stick around, it still doesn't matter. I know I got my ticket. So when,
Exactly.
when they say all aboard, I get on. Scott, this has been so interesting. If anyone has questions, like more information, how should they get in touch with you?
So they can email me at gcc God Centered Concept 2038 at gmail.com.
Amen. Amen. Folks, things are lining up just like the Bible and other prophecy experts said they would. When I heard, like I said, the other day, Pope Francis was in the hospital with a serious illness, my mind immediately went back to what I read a year before he even came into office, the Malachi prophecy. And now here we are. All I can tell you, though, is the same thing Jesus told his disciples in Luke 21, verse 34, 36. Watch. Watch therefore, pray always, that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that are about to come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. Jesus urged his followers not to be weighed down by distractions or sin or anxieties of life, but just remain spiritually awake. And that's what Scott's talking about. It's more than passive observation, though, it's about active preparation. Just as a soldier remains on guard duty, or a bride waiting for her groom with expectation, we are called to be spiritually alert, prayerful, and ready for his return at any moment. And it looks like that moment's going to get close here very, very soon. Amen. Scott, I appreciate you coming back on the program, and I look forward to the next discussion, which I have a feeling is going to be about that Malachi prophecy.
Yeah, I could tell you were already setting up the next for us for our next discussion. So, hey, we're looking
Amen.
forward to that. I'll have to do some reading up on that.
Yeah,
It's
me
not one
too.
that I'm familiar with, and I'm not
Yeah,
going to
I got to
pretend
go
that I
back and
am.
find my notes. I know I did a program on it way back when it was on. And I said this is probably 10, at least 10 years ago. So I got to go
Wow.
back and I keep records of everything. So I just got to go back and find it and start researching again. I got the book up here in the bookshelf. I'll pull it out too. But amen. Well, till next time, this Pastor Bob, along with Scott Wright, and myself, we're telling you to be blessed in all that you do.